Hey everyone, Adam and Andrew here with It Takes Two Takes. We're going to talk about episode 5, season 2, The Mandalorian. Chapter 13, some may say. But before we do that, we want to ask you, please, if you like what you see, let us know. Click things, say things, subscribe to things, maybe this channel. Anything you could do is appreciated. Adam, we're going to talk about this episode. I think it's the one that many people have been looking forward to, at least for this season. And we, as much as the plot was pretty much by the numbers for the world of Mandalorian, hey, can you help me with something sort of strategy that they've done with the plot week after week led to a very big someone involved.
We also got a lot of great backstory as well. This week's episode is directed by Dave Filoni. My guess was, he specifically wanted to do this episode because of the character that was in it.
They don't waste any time just introducing Ahsoka, like immediately. Like just any concerns you had, whether or not she was going to be in this episode, they just, boom, she's in it before Mando even gets to the planet. So rest assured, viewer, within the first several minutes, you already know what's happening. But yeah, like he gets to Corvus. I thought it was interesting when he gets there and he lands and he's like, there's not much to see out here. Meanwhile, there are giant creatures roaming around. I know that it's a Star Wars universe and it's just another day for some of these people, but I'm like, I don't know about not much to see here, but let's be wary of what's going on in the background there. But nonetheless, he did also not close his ship. I guess he left it completely open without locking the doors, let's say. It was different times back then, Adam. We just left our doors unlocked and we smoked unfiltered cigarettes and drank martinis.
Yeah, we don't know that if he wasn't, a certain amount of feet away, he didn't, pull out the little remote, deet, deet, and
right.
He shows up and, they say, hey, we need you to kill a Jedi. Well, there is a Jedi I'm looking for, so if you're going to point me in the right direction...
How in that conversation did they not go, by the way, isn't it crazy that we're talking about Jedi right now? The two, like, you know what I mean? Like, most people weren't seeing them or talking about them. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something on that conversation.
She shows up rather hostilely.
Naturally.
And, it takes a moment for him to convince her he's not there to fight. He just wants to talk. And she's just kind of like, I'm hoping you want to talk about that,
Yeah, and that being Baby Yoda.
Right. We got some interesting backstory on the child, or Baby Yoda, or as we now know him as is Grogu. We find out that he was actually on Coruscant when the Jedi were still around. He was being trained there. He was there during the downfall of it, and he was whisked away, kind of hidden. Nobody really knew where he was. During the whole episode 3, basically, he was being trained as a Jedi. We just never knew about it. So he knew Yoda. I mean, he would have known all the Jedi probably.
He would have known all the Jedi probably. He had a way of communicating with Ahsoka, obviously, which is how she found out all this information through the Force, of course. The name Grogu, look, let's be honest. We're not going to call him Grogu. Like, we don't call Mando Din, right? He's Mando. So I'm just going to keep calling him Baby Yoda. I mean, I feel like everyone's in agreement on this one.
Yeah, Twitter was kind of in agreement too. Like, there was nobody that really wants to call him Grogu. The toys might start saying Grogu on them.
Yeah, like Grogu's going to be reserved for like Wikipedia. That'll be it. And no one ever will refer to him that way. It's almost like they picked a name knowing no one will ever actually use it. Like, we need to pick a name no one wants to say for this adorable little creature, and so they can just keep calling him Baby Yoda, so we can move on with the reveal here.
I think a lot of people find it adorable. Every time, his name was said, he perked up, right?
I kind of likened it to, like, Mando's going to use it to get his attention when he's really in trouble. Like, he'll no longer, hey you. He's going to be like, Grogu. Like, when your parents use your middle name to call you out.
He's hesitant about the Force. When they tried the rock, didn't work. But hey, you bring out that little control knob, and he's all about using the Force at that point, right?
Right. At the end of the day, what Ahsoka basically says, she's not going to be able to teach him. And there's a number of reasons why we can interpret why not. But the ultimate reason is really just that he's
too much fear
bound.
And he's too much fear. She senses way too much fear. From that dark period where, the fall of the Jedi up until we see him in the first episode of season 1, a lot went on, and he's got a lot of fear, especially pertaining to the Force. And so she's worried about, Jedi's always worried about training someone who is Force sensitive, who's got a lot of fear. It's obviously turned out very wrong before. Later.
Yeah.
But in any case, we see them team up to free the town. So,
As usual. We've seen it time and time again with Mandalorian, the influences that are on that show, but not just that show, the influences that are on what influenced Star Wars. So, the fact that you've got we talk about the Western influence, right? But we don't spend a lot of time, at least with Mandalorian, really talking about the Kurosawa, influence that George Lucas had. So here we almost had that sort of, we had that moment of the sort of Western where Mando is reaching to draw his gun and he's having a bit of a standoff, right? And then meanwhile, Ahsoka's, crossing this bridge and confronting her enemy, and it's a sort of panning shot that had very much that sort of, Asian feel to it, the Eastern look to, you know what I'm trying to say with that? I thought that was interesting because you had the two influences, but going on at different times, but overlapping through the editing. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I think it was good. They kind of set us up all, go to this wooded, woodland planet, and it's a desolate wooded planet, right? It's, you're expecting some sort of big, green forest, and it's not that.
I'm curious to know, though, when you refer to that, if that has something to do with the classic Lucas move, too, where the evil empire, pulling from resources, maybe it was a lush forested planet.
Well, and they kind of alluded to that when they were talking about, about the Empire's influence there, and our main baddie, really being there. That's apparently a trait that, she's used to. The fight was the fight, the siege was the siege. I really enjoyed seeing that we've seen the metal that Mando wears stand up to blaster shots before. Yeah. But here we got to see, because that spear, it can stand up to a lightsaber.
Right.
So you start to understand, I think, a little bit better how the Mandalorians and the Jedi, when they talk about them being ancient, like enemies or ancient adversaries, how the Mandalorians could stand up to the Jedi, because if their armor and any weapons made out of that metal could stand up to a lightsaber, because we've seen almost nothing else be able to stand up to a lightsaber. If this metal can, I absolutely understand why the Mandalorians covet it so much.
Yeah, you could almost look back at the entire prequel, original, and sequel trilogy and go, wouldn't it have been nice to have that metal on a few different objects and key moments? I don't know, blast doors, whatever, but it's very hard to come by, obviously. There's a reason it's so rare.
So we got a lot of information, I think, in this episode, a lot more than we've gotten in some of the other previous episodes. So this episode was definitely information heavy. The action was still good. We saw kind of a draw battle. With Mando, when it's all said and done, he's still got Baby Yoda, and it's still his responsibility. And only now he's got a new planet he needs to go to.
The new planet he needs to go to, they did a quick, random, sort of out of nowhere drop of Admiral Thrawn, which we're really getting to EU now. We're talking books from the 90s and digging into that.
Rebels also.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Rebels also. So, yeah, it's I will say this. Even if you've never read anything from the EU, watched anything from Clone Wars or Rebels, I can appreciate the fact that as much as people talked about the Marvel universe and how well they've integrated everything, one of the big complaints of the Star Wars universe was just that everything felt, not everything, but a lot of times it felt forced. We have to rewrite things to make it fit into this. We have to do that. This feels much more casual, but in a good way. Like, it's just flows right through it. And it just kind of bringing pieces together, and it doesn't feel forced. So I give credit for that. I am enjoying that aspect for this show. I feel like it's doing it much better than even the prequel trilogy to a certain degree, and certainly the sequel trilogy. So
I will say that my biggest complaint was season 1 was it felt very dragged out. It felt very it'll take a long time to get from point A to point B, and it's a long time from a story standpoint to get from point A to point B, which I think in this season they've done a much better job with. We still get some filler stuff that happens here and there, but at the same time, it's not rushed, but it's not dragged out. I think the pacing in this season's been a whole lot better. It's been a hell of a lot more entertaining than last season was, in my opinion.
And look, of course, we will be back next week for episode 6. I hope I can edit this thing in time so that it's up before episode 6 comes out. But nonetheless, appreciate you watching.
Let us know what your comments are. I mean, do you like the name Grogu? Or does it seem not as catchy as Yoda or even Baby Yoda? Leave us some comments. And like we said at the beginning, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you next week on It Takes Two Takes.